So this is Baruch, and we're here still back here and reading the Ari. I know people that from way back when I first started learning, held that learning the Shar Kavanos was a real step up in Limud. And this is true. And if anybody who really wants to learn the Torah of the Rav, of the Ari Kodesh, this is the place that you can really get a lot of help, and especially in the piece that we're learning right now. We're going to go right over here into this page right here, and I apologize for any lighting difficulties with glare and so on and so forth. I really don't know how to handle it. I'm working on it. He said, V'abba the saint of Tefilos. Now, the actual service that we do during the orders and the organization of the Tefilos, Shatik Nalon Chazal, that were put in place by the rabbis, who the Sakan the Partsuf, and the idea of our prayers is to build the universes. These are the hidden worlds of the spiritual worlds. And what we're talking about the tikkun is that making them physical enough to be able to handle the light that's coming through them, and then to diminish the light of the Ein Sof. And then also to make yichudim, to make it possible for the partsufim to allow the flow of shefa from up above to come to down below. So he said, and also to bring shefa into the upper worlds. So this is an important idea. All of the shefa that comes into the world, shefa is another word for bracha. Because a bracha is like a brecha, it's a stream that flows down to you of goodness. He says all of that shefa that comes into the world, takes place as a result of the wedding of opposites, which is called a yichud, zocher v'nok. And then we see this phrase. He says a lot. The Rav says it's a lot of v'sari echezer aloka. From my flesh, I can imagine, I can project outward what the spiritual world looked like. Because through this yichud na'ase inin hamshachas arucha hadoros. This is also the yichud between man and woman. Of course, we understand is where children come from, and this is the extension of the generations. V'yesh hevdel bein the yichudim b'mehachol, and there's a real difference between the yichudim that you do during the weekday, the yichudim b'yom b'Shabbos, but the yichudim that come on Shabbos. So what we're talking about there is really the flow. The flow of the bounty of Hashem coming down to us is going to be different, whether it's weekday or whether it's going to be Shabbos. But partsufim shemis yachad, and when we talk about those partsufim that make these oneness, Sharak b'Shabbos hayichud hu dezav v'nok. Now this is an important hevdel. We have to be able to understand this. There are concepts of everything has subsets of subsets. But the particular, the transfer of the mochin of expanded consciousness into Zer Anpin or into us, which is the same thing, in the sense that we're just very far removed, much far outside or away from Zer Anpin, who's inside of us. So he says only during Shabbos do you have a yichud, which is called the yichud of the Za V'nuk, that is Zocher V'nuk, only there. But only in the week time, a yichud hu rak beYaakov v'Rachel is only in a subset, which is called Yaakov v'Rachel. Also male and female, so it's a lower level of yichud. So what's the difference? The question is, really the difference is from where is arriving these mochim and this bounty of bracha. Parts of Abba, so let's look at it like this, and this also rhymes up with the Zohar that we're teaching in different places. He says, Shehine parts of Abba mischalik the shnayim begoyv. So the parts of Abba in his height is divided into two. Mekeser, and from the crown, v'adachaz until the chest. Naase parts of Echad Hanikra Abba Ilor, there is one parts of that is a system of light processing. Once again, that is coming from the parts of which is called, let me see, I think I'll call Abba Ilor, the upper Abba, the upper father. But then from the system going down below, from the chazer going downwards, Naase parts of Tachton and Nikra Yisrael Sava. Now this is important information, I think, that any person who wants to learn a little bit about the Rab needs to know these facts. V'chein parts of Ima, so you also have the same concept. Ima mischala gam ken geseder. She's also divided like this. So he says, if you look at the whole concept of Bina, you'll see that the parts of an Elyon, there's an upper parts of and a lower parts of. The upper parts of Nikra Ima Iloa is called the upper Ima. V'atachton Nikra Tavuna, and the lower one is called Tavuna. Now these facts are facts that people need to know. They're basic ideas in Kabbalah that we need to know the nomenclature and the laws. Sometimes you'll see the word Tavuna used, and then other sides you see the word Bina. So we understand, if we see them all together, that we can understand there's a top part of the Bina model and a lower part of the Bina model, and the same thing is true of the Chochmah model. So there are situations where there's a yichud that takes place in the upper parts of it. Hanikroim Abba ve'ima Eloyin, which is called the parts of Abba ve'ima Eloyin. Behem connected parts of Chochmah Bechinas Chaya. So this corresponds to the lights that we have been talking about before, which is one of the lights called Naranchi. So not one of the lights, but the lights as a group are called Naranchi, and this is the Chaya part of that. Abba ve'ima Eloyin shine with a light that is called the refracted light called Chaya. But there's also time when the lower parts of it make a yichud, and they call him Yisrael Sava Tavuna, which are called by those names. The Haim Keneged parts of Bina bebechinas neshama, so they correspond to the concept of Bina, which is also the concept of neshama if we talk about it in terms of its lights. This is really the difference. Zehu achile bein chol to Shabbos, between the weekday and Shabbos. Shebachol, because in the weekday ein mekablim mochin rak me Yisrael Sava Tavuna, because during the weekday we only get mochin that come from the lower part of this Bina Tavuna, or this Chochmah Yisrael Sava. In other words, it's Yisrael Sava Tavuna and also Abba ve'ima Eloyin. So that is all one sort of transfer idea, but only the wants to say v'zeh hachiluk. Let me read it again. We're right here. V'zeh hachiluk. This is the difference bein chol to Shabbos. Shebachol ein mekablim mochin rak, from the lower part mi Yisrael Sava Tavuna, which is also known as Yasos. Avach b'Shabbos yesh hamshachas mochim gam Abba ve'ima Eloyin, but you have a much higher level of recognition of the Shefa being coming from that place. Amnam be'ez Rabba the Rabbi, but there is a time, especially on Shabbos, which is called the desire of desires, or the acceptance of acceptance. And we're going to talk about it, and we have been talking about it in the early morning shir. Now we're going to stop right here on this word v'hinei, and we'll pick up that the next time. These are very, very important pieces for scholars to know some background in the Ariya Kodesh. This is Baruch Fleischman at the Tikkun Elevator Kollel.